This time on Classic Motorcycle A to Z, it's the letter M, Part 1. So I'm going to be spending the next couple of months on a major adventure. This doesn't mean we're going to leave you without content though. We're putting together a series of videos which we're calling Classic Motorcycle A to Z. So basically we're going to run through the alphabet and give some history and information about various classic motorcycle companies as we go. Now it turns out there are an awful lot of motorcycle manufacturers whose names begin with the letter M, so this time we're going to break it into two separate videos. So this is the letter M, Part 1. Maico is a German manufacturer founded in 1926 by Ulrich Maisch and originally traded as Maisch & Co. The first motorcycles were of 98 and 123 cc's. These were two-strokes fitted with proprietary engines. However, after World War II, the company began to manufacture its own unit construction two-stroke engines, and in the 1950s would even have a brief foray into light motor car production, before settling in producing the Maico scooter. This was one of the first maxi scooters featuring a 247cc piston-ported two-stroke engine, although this would later be enlarged to 277cc's for the export version. The machines were constructed using tubular steel frames over which steel bodywork was laid. One interesting feature was that the scooter made use of larger 14-inch wheels, which gave to the machines more stable and better handling than their Italian counterparts. The 250 had a very creditable top speed of around 70 miles an hour. Although there were also smaller 125 and 200cc versions, these featured either 8 or 10-inch wheels, and top speed for these particular bikes was between 55 and 60 miles an hour. But perhaps Maico is best known for its range of motocross and enduro machines. And during the 1970s, the company would have great success in both Europe and America, where the machines could be relied upon to provide regular podium finishes. One of the reasons for the team's success would be their development of long-travel suspension systems during the late 70s. Competition success did not translate to commercial success, and in 1983 the company would file for bankruptcy, although they would continue to produce some bikes, although admittedly in small numbers, through until 1986. After 1986 the company was sold to Lorenz Merkel, who would continue to produce machines with the Maico name into the mid-90s, who would himself file for bankruptcy in 1997, and there would be no new Maicos until 1999, when two-stroke tuning expert Hermann Wagenbeck completely retuned Maico's 500cc unit. However, by 2003 the company was on the market again, and this time it was picked up by Kessler, who retained the rights to production today. And it was Kessler who would incrementally increase the capacity of Maico's largest engine, taking it to 620 and eventually to 695. And although the bike is eligible for open class, in many ways it's just too darn powerful. But is a very popular choice conversely in sidecar cross, where all that extra torque comes in very handy indeed. Motoran was a French manufacturer of bicycles, mopeds and motorcycles of course, and their first machine was a 175cc single-cylinder two-stroke which would reach the market in 1923. 1933 would see their first four-stroke machine, a 250cc single, and also in the mid-50s came two inline four-cylinder machines of 500 and 750cc, and it was during this period that Motoran would become the largest motorcycle manufacturer in France. Post-war they released the single-cylinder, rather utilitarian D45. This would later be replaced by the much more modern Z46, which at least included proper rear suspension. Like many other European manufacturers, Motoran would suffer during the 1960s in the face of cheap cars, although they would have some success selling their mopeds to the teens of Europe. And the company would revamp its range of tired old four-stroke machines and introduce a range of twin-cylinder 125 two-strokes. And in the mid-70s they would surprise the world, well France at least, when they introduced a range of three-cylinder two-strokes of 350 and 500cc. Alas, you'd be very lucky to see any of these machines outside of France. To help promote the company, they would take part in Grand Prix road racing during the 70s and early 80s, with a best finish as second in the 125 World Championship in 1980. But it was all for naught as the company went under in 1981. But given the success of the company's mobilette scooter range, the company was acquired by Yamaha, who would rechristen them MBK, and continues to manufacture scooters to this day. In the years following World War I, Mr. G. McKenzie marketed what was called an ultra-lightweight motorcycle. It used a small two-stroke engine in a lightweight frame, and to ensure that the bike was accessible to all, it had an open frame to better accommodate lady riders. The engine of the first model was a 170cc Hobart two-stroke, which used belt direct drive. In 1923 a more luxurious model was added with Druid forks and a 2-speed transmission. 1924 will see a change to AZA 150 engine, with production ending in 1925. Now these next machines could easily have been fitted into R, but we're going to go with Matisse, the name of the frame, simply because the machines continue to be built to this day under the Matisse name, long after the machine's association with the Rickman brothers ended. Now the Rickman brothers were keen motocrossers, or scramblers as it would have been called at that time, and whilst they liked the performance of the Triumph engine, they weren't too impressed with the performance of its chassis, so they began to build their own machines using BSA frames, essentially building a Tribser. These would be very successful, and eventually people were approaching the Rickman brothers to ask them to build bikes for them. But the brothers felt that although the BSA chassis was pretty good, they could definitely do better, and so in 1959 they created the Matisse Mark I, which would evolve into the distinctively styled machines of the 1960s, when the machines would find favour in motocross, desert racing and enduro events, famously becoming the machine of choice for Hollywood actor Steve McQueen. And they would find that the chassis would prove popular for roadsters too, with the brothers creating famous road-going machines like the Rickman Interceptor, which made use of a Royal Enfield Interceptor 2 engine. But there would also be Japanese engines, Rickman Kawasaki's and Rickman Hondas, with sporting road riders keen to buy the Matisse chassis to overcome the shortcomings of their Japanese superbikes. In the early 80s the Rickman brothers decided to retire, so they sold the name to Pat French, who would purchase the tooling and continue to develop the Matisse chassis kits. Although Pat French died in 2007, his former business partner Jay Releasy continues to manufacture Matisse frames and indeed complete motorcycles, fitted with an engine of the customer's choosing, or even with Matisse's own 997cc parallel twin engine. Motoran was founded in 1937 by one Alfonso Morini in Bologna in Italy, where he had previously worked with one Mario Mazzetti to produce the MM motorcycles. Curiously, Marini's first products after leaving MM were a couple of three-wheelers with 350 and 500cc engines. Production was of course halted during World War II, and in 1943 the Allies bombed the factory. Nevertheless, in 1946 Marini would reappear, but now with a single-cylinder conventional motorcycle using a two-stroke engine of 125cc, and in 1947 a sporty version would be added to the range. 1953 would see the introduction of what would go on to be one of Marini's most important engines, the 175 overhead valve 4-stroke unit, which would go on to power a whole family of small motorcycles such as the Gran Turismo, the Settebello, the Ribello, Supersport, Briscola, Trizetta and Trizetta Sprint. 1956 would see the company move to a larger production facility, and in 1958 they would develop their first Grand Prix bike, a 250 with dual overhead cams. In the early 70s Marini would launch their 72-degree V-twin engine, which employed overhead valves and Heron heads, just like the later Moto Guzzi small blocks. The 350, known as the 3.5, used a 344cc V-twin engine and was available in either Sport or Strada models, both running essentially the same motor. The engine was over square, with a bore and stroke of 62 by 57, and so did like to be revved. There was also 250 and 500cc versions which would follow later. These little machines proved very popular, but unfortunately high price would set a limit on their sales potential. Early models were kickstart only, though an electric leg would be added later. And there was also drum brakes on some early models too, although all machines would gain all-round disc brakes in the 1980s. Into the 80s the machines would be given a thorough restyle job, and of course bowing to fashion there would be Paris-Dakar style machines in both 350 and 500. After a family disagreement in 1948, Giuseppe Benelli left the family firm and decided to strike out on his own, forming a new company initially called Moto B Pesaro. He would later abbreviate this to Motor Bi. Initially he sold small two-stroke scooters and motorcycles, but in 1953 he developed a horizontal two-stroke of 200cc, and its horizontal engine and press steel frame will become something of a motorbike trademark. The egg-like styling of the crankcase would influence the designs of a number of other companies, including BSA. The two-stroke would eventually be abandoned and replaced by a range of 125 and 175 four-stroke singles, although again with horizontally mounted cylinders. Around this time, Giuseppe Bonelli would die, and his two heirs would bring in Primo Zanzani to develop little horizontal four-strokes into competition machines, and indeed the machines would be successful at a national level in road races and hill climbs. In the early 60s, Bonelli was expanded into the growing US motorcycle market, and so in 62 they would buy Motorbike, allowing them to greatly increase their manufacturing capacity. Hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting. Look out, there will be more videos in the series coming soon. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, thank you very much for watching.